Okay, imagine this for a second. What if you chose to completely wipe your memory? And I'm not talking about dealing with trauma here, but a totally voluntary memory wipe, just to escape the sheer, exhausting weight of your own everyday existence. Today, our explainer's unpacking this really fascinating story called The Forgetting That Is Not Loss. And trust me, it's going to take us on a pretty profound journey straight into the nature of the self. This whole premise immediately forces us to ask what might be the ultimate question. If you forgot your entire life, would you still be you? It's definitely a provocative thought. Like, if we literally strip away our biography, our accumulated memories, our entire history, what exactly is left behind? Well, let's follow our protagonist and find out. All right, let's dive into Section 1, The Clean Waking, Pure Awareness Without Memory. So, picture this. Our protagonist wakes up in a mysterious room with completely white walls. He has absolutely no past and zero context for where he is. The only thing he has is this little blue notebook containing very specific instructions. And here's the crazy part. They're written in his own handwriting. Imagine reading the ground rules for your own existence, written by a past version of yourself that you don't even remember. Now, the most striking rule in there is number 3. What you do with this time is what you are. It completely forces him to exist in the present tense. Now, right outside his single window, there's a garden, and it contains exactly 5 stones. There's one large, central stone catching the light, and 4 smaller ones creating this really interesting asymmetrical balance. He spends hours every day just watching them, using them to practice pure awareness. He's noticing reality exactly as it is, without the heavy judgmental clutter of his own memories getting in the way. Moving right along to Section 2, the illusion of continuity, pattern over substance. As the days go by, he gets into this habit of writing what he calls true sentences, basically just simple, grounded observations of the room. And this leads to a beautifully profound metaphor in his notes. A wave continues, even though the water only rises and falls in place. Actually, stop and think about that for a second. When you watch a wave in the ocean, the actual water isn't traveling horizontally. It's really just rising and falling in place. It totally makes you wonder, are you the physical substance, or are you the repeating pattern? We can easily break this down into substance versus pattern. Substance is the physical stuff, right? The cells of your body, the water in the ocean, and all that heavy accumulation of personal memories over a lifetime. Pattern, on the other hand, is the continuous wave. For our protagonist, it's his habit of writing true sentences, his continuous observing awareness. And he realizes something huge here. Even though his substance, his memory, is completely resetting every single day, his pattern remains incredibly consistent. You know, it turns out this daily memory wipe is essentially a literal, real-world manifestation of a classic philosophical puzzle, the ship of Theseus. If a wooden ship has every single original plank replaced over time, is it fundamentally the exact same ship? Well, if every single memory is replaced between sleeps, is he the same self? The notebook really seems to argue yes. He might not be continuous, but he is absolutely consistent. Which brings us to Section 3, Crossing the Threshold. The choice to exist. Okay, so after going through this cycle over and over, our guy finally opens the door to his room and steps out into this vast facility. Out there, he discovers 7 filled notebooks left behind by a previous patient, a guy named Marcus Weaver. And Marcus's journey is just a perfect illustration of the spectrum of human reaction to total ego death. Check out this timeline. Day 1 starts with desperate resistance. He's literally repeating his own biography, just trying to hold on. Fast forward to day 89, and he's just tired of fighting the forgetting. By day 312, he reaches complete acceptance. He finally finds peace with the stones in the garden. And then on day 350, he's finally ready to open the door to the outside world. Reading through Marcus's journey triggers this massive realization. Every identity is a reenactment, but most people have forgotten they are performing. He realizes that all identity, including his own forgotten past, is honestly just a performance of habits and stories we tell ourselves. It's this exact insight that finally gives him the courage to exit the facility altogether. Honestly, it kind of makes you pause and wonder, what are you afraid of finding beyond your own door? Because leaving the facility means leaving this contained, simple perfection. It is completely terrifying to abandon our safe, predictable routines for a world that is so complex and demanding. All right, on to Section 4, the weight of being, the burden of the construct. So our protagonist heads down into a nearby town and actually figures out who he used to be. He was a philosophy professor named Samuel Klein. And guys, the contrast here is just startling. Up in the facility, he cultivated this pure awareness. He was light, deeply present, totally free of his own history. But the old Samuel construct, that guy was incredibly heavy. He was overthinking everything, drowning in his own regrets, and just constantly performing his emotions instead of actually feeling them. And we can actually explain the exact reason why Samuel originally sought out the facility using a concept he himself used to teach. It's Heidegger's Dasein, which translates simply to being there. It describes an entity for whom its very being is an issue. Simply put, Samuel was stressed out just by the sheer fact of existing. The accumulated weight of his identity, all his past choices, and his crushing self-consciousness had just become this unbearable burden. And that leads us to a deeply liberating paradox. He says, freedom might be just another word for nothing left to lose, and I have nothing left to lose because I never had anything to begin with. By intentionally wiping his entire memory, Samuel actually found the ultimate freedom. He can now exist right there in his old town, completely free from the anxiety of his past. And that brings us to our final section. Section 5, choosing who you are, the persistence of being. So the new Samuel slowly starts reintegrating into society. He meets up with his grieving sister Rebecca and even returns to his old philosophy reading group. But here's the thing, he doesn't try to force himself back into the old mold. At the reading group, they discuss Spinoza's conatus, which is the innate inclination of a thing to continue to exist and strive to persist in its own being. It's basically the survival instinct of the soul. And Samuel realizes that even when he intentionally erased himself, his pure, observing essence was fighting to persist. The memory dissolved, sure, but his fundamental pattern survived. All of this points straight to the ultimate realization of this explainer. Identity is not found or remembered, but chosen, moment by moment, decision by decision. Samuel realizes he absolutely doesn't owe his past choices any allegiance. We are not prisoners of our past, you guys. We are the architects of our present choices. He gets to choose exactly what parts of his life to pick back up and what to just leave behind forever. Like one of his true sentences says, what persists through change is more real than what changes. All the superficial details of our lives, our jobs, our embarrassing mistakes, our heavy, complicated biographies, they all change over time, or they can literally be forgotten. But the essential self, that pure, quiet awareness observing the world, that is what truly survives. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. What parts of your own construct would you choose to leave behind? If you had a clean waking tomorrow morning, what heavy biography, what anxieties, or what old, outdated stories would you simply refuse to pick back up? It's definitely a question worth asking yourself today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Until next time, keep observing the pattern.